Hi guys, this is me, Teacher Fernando, and welcome to another video. Today, I'm reading the story Eveline, which is a story from Dubliners, of course, and it will be the third story from this book. So let's get started. But before that, I had forgotten. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, to give a thumbs up, and write on the comments. That's appreciated. And now, here we go. Eveline is facing the most important decision of her life. Should she stay at home, a place of misery but familiarity, or should she take a risk and seize the opportunity to escape? The decision she makes will determine her whole future. She sat at the window, watching the evening darken the street. Her head was against the curtains, and she could smell the dust in their heavy cotton. She was tired. Few people passed. The man from the last house passed on his way home. She heard his footsteps on the pavement and afterwards on the path in front of the new red houses. One time there used to be a field in which she and her brothers and sisters used to play every evening with other people's children. Then a man from Belfast bought the field and built houses in it. Not like their little brown houses, but bright brick houses with shining roofs. The children from the street used to play together in that field. The Dubliners, the Waters, the Duns. She and her brothers and sisters. She thought her family had seemed happy then. Her father was not so bad then, and besides, her mother was alive. That was a long time ago. She and her brothers and sisters were all grown up now, and her mother was dead. Her friend Dizzy Dunn was dead too, and the Waters family had gone back to England. Everything changes. Now she was going to go away like the others, to leave her home. Home! She looked around the room at all its familiar objects, which she had dusted once a week for so many years, wondering where all the dust could possibly come from. Perhaps she will never see again all those things which she had never dreamed of being separated from. She had agreed to go away, to leave her home. Was that wise? She tried to weigh each side of the question. In her home she had shelter and food. She had people she had known all her life around her. Of course, she had to work hard both in the house and at the business. What would they say of her in the shop where she worked? When they found out that she had run away with a fellow? They would say she was a fool, perhaps, and they would advertise to fill her place. Miss Gavin, the manager, will be glad. She had always had a sharp tongue, especially whenever there were people listening. Miss Hale, don't you see that these ladies are waiting? Hurry up, Miss Hale, please. Eveline would not cry many tears at leaving the shop. But in her new home, in a distant, unknown country, it would not be like that. Then she would be married. She, Eveline. People would treat her with respect then. She would not be treated as her mother had been. Even now, although she was over 19, she sometimes felt herself in danger of her father's violence. She knew it was his violence that had awakened her heart. When they were growing up, he had never hit her, like he used to hit her brothers Harry and Ernest, because she was a girl. But recently, he had begun to threaten her and say what he would do to her, and now she had nobody to protect her. Ernest was dead, and Harry was nearly always working away from home. Anyway, she was tired of arguing about money every Saturday night, and always gave all her wages, and Harry always sent what he could. But the difficulty was to get any money from her father. He said he was no good with money, and that he wasn't going to give her his hard-earned money to throw about the streets. He said much more, too, because he was usually bad from drinking on Saturday nights. In the end, he used to give her the money and ask her if she had any intention of buying Sunday's dinner. Then she had to rush out as quickly as she could and do her shopping. holding her black leather purse tightly in her hand as she elbowed her way through the crowds, and returning home late, loaded with shopping. She had hard work to keep the house together after her mother's death, and to see that the two young children who had been left in her care went to school regularly and got their meals on time. It was hard work, a hard life, but now that she was about to leave it, she began to feel it was not so bad after all. She was about to explore another life with Frank. Frank was very kind, manly, open-hearted. She was going away with him by the night boat to be his wife, and to live with him in Buenos Aires, where he had a home waiting for her. How well she remembered the first time she had seen him. He was staying at the house on the main road where she used to visit. It seemed only a few weeks ago. He was standing at the gate, his sailor's cap pushed back on his head, and his hair falling forward over his brown face. Then they had come to know each other. He used to meet her outside the shop every evening after work and take her home. He took her to the cinema, and she felt delighted to be sitting there next to him. He was awfully fond of music and sang a little. When he sang about the girl who loved Sailor, she always felt pleasantly confused. First of all, it had been exciting to have a fellow, and then she had begun to like him. He told stories of distant countries he had been to, and the ships he had sailed on. He had been lucky in Buenos Aires, he said, and had come back to the old country just for a holiday. Of course, her father had found out about Frank and had forbidden her to talk to him. "I know these sailors," he said. One day he had quarreled with Frank, and after that she had to meet her lover secretly. The evening deepened in the street. The two white letters in her hand were in shadow. One was to Harry, the other to her father. Ernest had been her favorite brother, but she liked Harry too. Her father was becoming old lately, she noticed. He will miss her. Sometimes he could be very nice. Not long before, when she was ill for a day or two, he had read a ghost story to her and made supper for her at the fire. And in the past, when her mother was alive, they had gone to the countryside for the day. She remembered her father once putting on her mother's hat to make the children laugh. Her time was running out, but she continued to sit by the window with her head against the curtain, breathing in the smell of the dusty cotton. Down in the street, far away, she could hear the street organ playing. She knew the piece. How strange to hear it again that very night. It reminded her of her promise to her mother, her promise to keep the home together as long as she could. She remembered the last night of her mother's illness. She was there in the dark, airless room by her mother's bedside, and out in the street, someone was playing a sad Italian song. Her father had rushed out and told the organ player to go away. As she sat there by the window, the full horror of her mother's pitiful life, a life of a continual sacrifice, ending in final craziness, made her feel cold to the bone. She trembled as she heard again her mother's dying, senseless words. She stood up with a sudden feeling of terror. "Escape! She must escape! Frank will save her. He will give her life, perhaps love too. She wanted to live. Why should she be unhappy? She could be happy, like other people. Frank will take her in his arms. He will save her." She stood among the moving crowd in the station at the harbor. He held her hand, and she knew that he was speaking to her, saying something about the passage over and over again. The station was full of soldiers with brown backs. She could see the black shape of the ship waiting in the harbor. She answered nothing. She felt her face pale and cold, and out of her desperation she prayed to God to direct her, to show her what her duty was. The ship blew a long, sad whistle into the mist. If she went, tomorrow she will be on the sea with Frank, sailing towards Buenos Aires. Their passage had been booked. Could she refuse to go after all he had done for her? Her unhappiness made her feel sick, and she kept moving her lips in silent prayer. A bell rang loudly in her heart. She felt him take her hand. "Come," he said. All the seas of the world washed around her heart. He was pulling her into them. He would drown her. With both hands, she held the iron railing as tightly as she could. "Come," he repeated. No, no, no. It was impossible. She held on to the railing, confused and desperate, sending out a cry of pain among the seas. "Eveline, Evie!" He rushed beyond the railings and called to her to follow. People shouted at him to go on, but he still called to her. She turned her white face to him, unmoving, like a helpless animal. Her eyes gave him no sign of love. They did not even seem to recognize him or say goodbye. And that's the end of the story. Okay, guys. Bye-bye. Take care. And see you. This is Pizza for Now.